So hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the second webinar of this webinar series on transformative pedagogy for peace and resilience building and the prevention of violent extremism. I'm extremely excited for this particular webinar and to hear from our numerous speakers and distinguished guests and panelists today. Just a few technical details and just 2 slides for you before we get going. So here we go. If you are a participant regarding camera, microphone, and questions and answers, so for optimal viewing of the webinar, kindly mute yourselves and refrain from activating your camera. This is the best way of. If you have any questions for the panelists, do not hesitate to use the chat function as well. That should be. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Okay, so if you have any questions for the panelists, do not hesitate to use the chat function, and we will do our best to moderate and answer any questions that you may have. Regarding our child, we have a child safeguarding policy in place. So this is very relatively easy to understand. We aim to ensure a safe, inclusive space for the children and young people taking part in today's event. To that end, if anyone, regardless if you are a speaker or a person who is under 18, please only kindly rename yourself by only using your first name, and do not include your full name on Zoom, as this is also being recorded for child safeguarding purposes. And if there are any concerns or questions regarding this matter, please send a message to the child safeguarding focal point, which I suppose for the purpose of this webinar will be myself. So you may send a private message to me at any point during the webinar. That's about it concerning this. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you so much for joining. And Mr. Sal, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Xavier, for these housekeeping rules. I think they are very clear, and we all will all abide by that. So thank you very much, dear participants, honorable guests, dear colleagues. Thank you for joining us to this second webinar on transformative pedagogy for peace and resilience building. My name is Saliu Sal. I'm the senior program coordinator of UNESCO ICBA, and I will be honored to moderate this webinar. For your information and as a reminder, this series of webinars is organized as part of the project that ICBA leads, Prevention of Extremism and Resurgence amid the COVID-19 pandemic through education in Africa, aligned with the spirit of TICAT 7 and NABZA, with financial support by the government of Japan. The participants today, the participants of the webinar series today include educators from universities coming from African countries, 4 African countries, namely Uganda, in that order, Uganda, Somalia, South Africa, and Zimbabwe. The objective of the webinar will be shared to you by Dr. Yumiko in her opening remarks. But we have the panelists. Let me give you the name of the panelists. We have Mr. Abdulrazak Mukhtar Yusuf, the head of Curriculum Development Teacher Training Department, Somali National University. We have Mr. Reynold Gallant, lecturer, Faculty of Education, Nelson Mandela University, South Africa. We have Tindai Marova. Dr. Tindai Marova is a lecturer in History Education, Department of Humanities, Business Development and Arts Education, Faculty of Education, Midland State University. And we have Mrs. Annette Mugisha Kazura, Commissioner, Teacher Education, Training and Development Department, Ministry of Education and Sport in Uganda. After the presentations from the panelists, we'll have a discussion for about 30 to 40 minutes before closing the webinar. The closing will be made by Professor Lydia Artur Bito, Regional Director and Representative, sorry. I have some issues with the connection. I will be back to you in a minute. Let me switch off my video for a better condition. Yeah, thank you. I think you can hear me better. So I was saying that the closing remark will be made by Professor Lydia Arthur Bitro, Regional Director and Representative of UNESCO Harare Office. In case she might not join us because of problem of connectivity, her representative, Mrs. Julia, will pronounce the closing remarks on her behalf. We also have a guest, Dr. Jonas Adai Adeto, Associate Professor Peace and Security Studies at Addis Ababa University, who will be delivering the keynote remarks. But before the keynote remarks, I am going to hand over the floor to Dr. Yumiko Yokozeki, Director of IBA, for the opening remark. Yumiko, if you are with us, yeah, I know that you are with us. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Saliu, my colleague. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear very well.
Okay, thank you. So greetings to everyone, Director, Regional Director and the representative of UNESCO Harare Office, and Dr. Jonas Adai, my dear friend. I'm afraid I also have to switch off my video because internet is not very stable. So that's a reality, isn't it? But still we are connected with the sound and also with our heart. And Mr. Reynold Gallant, the lecturer and the Faculty of Education, Nelson Mandela University in South Africa, and the lecturer from Somalia, and also Dr. Tendai Marova, lecturer in History Education from Zimbabwe, and Mrs. Annette Mugisha Kajura. We were just together in the IGAT meeting, Commissioner of Teacher Education, Training and the Development Department, the Ministry of Education and Sports from Uganda. Dear participants, partner organizations, Arigato International, who does wonderful facilitation, and my dear colleagues in ICUBA and UNESCO. It is a great honor and pleasure to welcome all the guests to this online lessons learned webinar. Today's focus is on universities' experience to adapt transformative pedagogy for peace building through education at universities. This webinar is organized under the project called Prevention of Extremism and its resurgence amid the COVID-19 pandemic through education in Africa, aligned with the spirit of TIGAD 7 and NAPSA, supported by the government of Japan. Peace is one of the African Union's priorities. Aspiration 4 of the Agenda 2063, Africa We Want, emphasizes that the culture of peace and tolerance shall be nurtured in Africa's children and young people through peace education. The Continental Education Strategies for Africa, CESA, also calls for peace education and paying a special attention to safeguarding education in time of emergency and ensuring safe teaching and learning environment. Sadly, African youth and the children are at the risk of violence and extremism in different forms and manifestations. The factors that push and pull youth into extremism and violence are rooted in a very complex social, political, economic, and educational dynamics. For these reasons, UNESCO's peace-building efforts focus heavily on youth empowerment, and there is no better place than schools and universities to address such struggles that many youth face. Due to conflict in many parts of Africa, as well as the negative impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, teachers are now called more than ever to reinvent how learning takes place, ensure that it reaches learners in inclusive, meaningful, and quality ways. It requires addressing not only the curricular areas, but also the emotional and mental challenges that stem from uncertainty and that children and young people struggle with because they do influence how learning occurs. We all suffered from COVID-19, so you can imagine how children and young people were affected. Transformative pedagogy can support teachers to conduct learner-centered learning that helps empowering learners, including teachers themselves, to reflect critically about their reality become aware of their individual and collective responsibilities, emphasize with others, and equip essential knowledge, skills, and attitude to positive act locally and global context. Transformative pedagogy has a potential to transform our schools and universities by inspiring and equipping young people to learn to live together with resilience and peaceful intentions. Through transformative pedagogy for peace-building initiatives, UNESCO ICBA, in collaboration with more than 25 countries in Africa, have worked in 50 universities and teacher training institutions to ensure that the educators and teachers are capacitated on context-relevant and pedagogically responsive peace education approaches. The aim of this collaboration is to make higher education institutions a place for peace building. I hope this webinar will be a great opportunity for many of the universities to share their experiences and lessons learned and the future intervention areas and approaches with us and with the wider global communities. This is a virtual sharing and thinking platform, which we expect to enhance dialogue and generate evidence on the practice of transformative pedagogy and its role in preventing violence. Your contribution will be crucial in the development of evidence-based practice that can be replicated in schools, universities, and teacher training institutions in different countries. Finally, I would like to thank all agencies collaborated on this event, including many of the universities in Africa and all the UNESCO regional office and country offices on the continent, universities in Japan, in particular Hiroshima University, Sophia University, and Nagasaki University, Addis Ababa University's Peace and Security Department. Many thanks to the government of Japan for the financial support for the good cause, for this good cause. Thank you also to Arigato International for the long and successful partnership and excellent facilitation. Last but not least, I would like to thank all the presenters for sharing with us your experiences. I'm very grateful having you all today and looking forward to a great lessons learned sharing. Thank you very much. I wish you all a very fruitful deliberation. May God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Yumiko Yokozeki, Director of UNESCO ICBA. I add my voice to yours to thank our collaborators from Arigato International who participated in the organization and preparation organization of this webinar. Thank you for insisting on the paramount importance of role of peace and peace building and the place they occupy in UNESCO and CEDAR's program, but also the role the important role that is expected from teachers in general and university lecturers to address this issue among young people. And I hope that from the presentations, we'll have a lot of information and participants will really enjoy this webinar. Thank you very much again. So now I'm going to give the floor to Dr. Jonas Adai Adeto, who is Peace and Security Studies at Addis Ababa University. So Dr. Jonas, you have the floor.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you. Can you hear me all? Can I be heard?
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
Yes,
thank you very much.
We can hear you and see you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency, Dr. Yumiko, other excellencies, honorables, dignitaries, and all protocols observed. Thank you very much for this extremely important, particularly very timely topic, and for inviting me to take part in this. And the good caveat is that I'm talking from Jijiga, from Dedawa, at the same time here from the way. So if anything goes wrong, please bear with me. And now that's also part of maybe this transformative pedagogy, how to transform local problems and get quickly adjusted. Fine, so I'd like to focus on 4 points. One is what transformative pedagogy is, why transformative pedagogy we have to focus on, And the third one, what we are focusing on when we are doing this. And finally, how can we make use of transformative pedagogy so as to build peace, resilience, as well as prevent violent extremism in Africa particularly. So this very small picture might show us what's meant to what I think transformative pedagogy should be, a sort of an argument. So immediately, we have this banking system, lecturing system almost across the world. And particularly in our context in Ethiopia here, as I taught and learned, that we keep on just having a look at. It focuses on content areas, of course, informing, which is not a very bad thing at all. But at the same time, also even sometimes forming the behavior of the students as well. But the point is for us, transforming it. So as you can see, eggs as banking, larva as informing, pupa as forming, gradually taking shape, but finally like that butterfly, which becomes fully fledged, then transforming. That's really the central idea to my understanding of what's meant by transformative pedagogy, how it should transform our thinking, as Dr. Yumiko put it, the knowledge, the attitudes, the skills, our even way of living together, reassessing, developing our critical thinking. So why transformative pedagogy? Number one, it helps us to make learning transcend the mind and connect with hearts and actions by transforming the knowledge, the attitude, the skills, focusing on whole school, not only one type of school, but one type of subject for 45 minutes or for 90 minutes, but the entire focusing on developing entire courses, focusing on developing whole person of the student, focusing on making, of course, learning meaningful to everyday life as well. Number two, it is an inclusive pedagogy which stresses mostly on democratic citizenship, freedom of expression, creating conditions for respect and celebrating differences. Differences should not be seen as source of conflict or violence as we witness in Ethiopia today, but it should be a beauty to be celebrated, indeed. Of course, around the world, as we can also see, differences rather than being regarded as given naturally, celebrating them, people happen to make them basis for conflict and fighting and, of course, killing each other, indeed. So for that, an antidote is transformative pedagogy, to my understanding. Number three, emphasizes, because it emphasizes active learning process where curiosity, the why questions of the learners, developing skills of how to learn, not only learning, but learning how to learn, thinking how to think, the very foundation of life skill itself. For this is so important, very important, even more important than delivering knowledge and information. That being really the case, we have to really adopt, particularly this transformative, which transcending pedagogy, or if you like, inclusive pedagogy. And the fourth one, it focuses on appreciative inquiry without looking down on anyone's culture or color or creed, but appreciating, because yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello, is that okay? Can I continue?
Yes, yes. Okay, yes.
Network discussion.
Right, okay. So appreciative inquiry grounded on the unique nature needs of each learner, each pupil, each student, and the unique setting of the very environment. The fifth one, students are the center of the very learning process. Indeed. So then what should higher education do for that, to that end? Number one, create safe and attractive learning environment. I say safe, I like to underline safe, because schools, not only in African context, even as you've heard, time and again, of course, in the media as well, what's going on in the schools, it's including in the USA, shootings, killings, no more safe places, no more attractive places. Even the schools become sometimes battleground. So creating safe, attractive environment, learning environment as a prerequisite, if you like, so as to practice transformative pedagogy. 2, let the students think about their own experience, beliefs, and biases as well. Be well aware, then develop critical thinking. 3, promote students' engagement and participation in activities, particularly both academic and social activities, so that they can walk the talk, so that they can test, they can test their hypotheses that they discuss in the other pedagogy, and then they can just see, they can live the life of learning, not simply talking about the learning. 4, pose real-world problems that addresses inequalities, injustices, suspicions, hatred, violent extremism, terrorism, radicalization that pose threat for our very survival. These should really enable students to very critically engage in the learning process itself. Finally, let the students implement action-oriented solutions so as to learn how to solve problems using the 3H, head, hand, and heart together. So the final question is, does transformative pedagogy lead to building peace and resilience and to the prevention of conflict for extremism or radicalization or extreme violence or violent extremism? I propose, my answer is just yes. And I propose 5 questions for each and every particular learner and participants. The first one, raising the 5 P's. 1 P is a purpose. Why am I here as a human being? Do I have any mission in life? And shouldn't that mission be peace? Is there anything more than peace? Make students ask themselves, to ask, why am I here on this planet? I'm not simply a biological accident for my parents went to bed, but I have come to this world to accomplish a mission in life. Give them that mission. Number 2, passion. In anything that I do, particularly in a school curriculum, engaging with passion, not for the sake of scoring A's or 100 or %, but rather making the difference, comparing and competing themselves with the previous themselves, not only with the peer competition, but self-competition as well. Number 3, partnership. Encourage, promote working pair, group together, collaborative thinking, collaborative acting, as we say in African context. If you want to go far, go alone. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. That togetherness that Dr. Yumiko referred to as learning to live together, that must be there for them to see, to learn from each other, so socialization process. The 4th P is practicing, that is everyday problem solving capacities, skills. Practicing, that is walking the talk. That is testing the hypothesis that they discussed in classroom. And finally, P, the last P, prayer. We are not simply flesh or some total of atoms, but also we are spiritual as well as human beings. So there are some other transcendental things that we have yet to discover. And that is the heart aspect, the spiritual aspect as well. It is this whole approach that can really give life, breathe life into transformative pedagogy with a view to building peace and resilience, and of course, preventing violent extremism. I'm sure if we collaborate like now we have started, what we are talking can really be there so as to make some difference wherever we are. May the Creator bless us all wherever we are. And thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Professor Jonas. If we were doing the webinar face-to-face, I would like to ask a round of applause to you. Thank you for the brilliant presentation. You did it very well, and all went because you applied transformative pedagogy, you adjusted. And thank you for sharing this very relevant picture going from banking to transforming, and for bringing forward the questions and the answers. Of course, we want to as far as possible, so we'll have to go together. Thank you very much. So before going to the next step, I will ask everybody to turn on their videos so that we take group picture. So I'm kindly requesting you to turn on your videos, and I'm handing over to Kasumi for that. Kasumi, are you with us?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Yes,
it's nice
please.
to see diverse audience here. Please, may I ask everyone to turn on your camera, please. Sorry, turn on, please. There are several screens, so let me take the first one with the count of 3, 3, 2, 1. Please smile. Then next group, keep smiling, please. 1, 2, 3. Another one. Please bear with me. Okay, the last one with a big smile. 3, 2, 1.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kasumi. I know that the pictures will be wonderful. Okay, now we're going to the presentations. I would like to call upon Mrs. Annette Mugisha Kajura from Uganda to make up her presentation. Ms. Ujira is Commissioner for, let me see, Commissioner Teacher Education Training and Development Department at the Ministry of Education and Sport in Uganda. So Mrs. Annette, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, good evening, colleagues and protocol observed. I want to request that I take off my video for fear of interrupting my presentation. What has happened to my presentation?
Dr. Annette, do you want to share from your side or you prefer me to share?
I would like to share from my side, please.
Okay, please go ahead.
Oh. Let's wait. Do you now see the presentation?
Yes, we can see it. Please go ahead.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I am happy to be here this afternoon, and like my colleague said, I'm looking at, oh God, what is happening? I am Assistant Commissioner in the Department of Teacher Education Training and Development at the Ministry of Education in Uganda. This afternoon, I'm sharing you with how we have implemented peace education and resilience building and prevention of violence education in Uganda. Following the consultation experience sharing workshop that we had here in Addis, actually I'm presenting from Addis in 2019, Uganda has taken a number of initiatives aimed at increasing teacher educators' capacity in transformative pedagogy for peace and resilience building, as well as prevention of violence in teacher education. As you all know, teachers are agents. Oh, my slides are not moving. I don't know what. I wish I could remove this. I want to remove this side. Okay.
You have to go on view option.
If you don't mind, our colleague would share.
Yes.
Okay, good.
How have we done the transformative pedagogy in our country, Uganda? We have held webinars. We have looked at the situation analysis, and we have developed guidelines for helping the teacher educators to implement the transformative pedagogy. This has helped us to reach the over 40 primary teachers, 40 secondary teachers, 20 teacher educators, and this has increased the understanding of peace education and prevention of violence of extremism. We also have had 5 universities getting involved, and the purpose was to help them understand the need for integration of peace education and prevention of violence extremism in teacher education. Like I said, teachers, if we want to do anything, you must make sure that you empower teacher educators so that all the graduates that go to teach at every level, they have that you need. We also have had to develop guidelines using the situation analysis report that I have talked about. The findings, we use them to make the guidelines that would help the teachers in the implementation. As a result, we have the curriculum of some courses at some different universities, as you'll see ahead. Teaching and learning strategies has also been included at some levels in the universities. And we also had the guidelines that were developed, validated, and refined to have ownership of the teachers that are involved. We have also had the pilot phase starting, and these guidelines are being piloted at one of our universities and some teacher training institutions. Stakeholders had to validate so that, you know, like in the previous speech and remarks, you have heard that if you want to go far, you go. If you want to go far, you must go with other people. So we didn't want to move faster so that we go alone. We had to make sure that stakeholders validate the guidelines so that they support us in the implementation.
Our approach was anchored. Our approach was anchored and supported in curriculum. We were focusing on the use of pedagogical strategies that support the learners being at the center of everything that we do. And some of these strategies included, and they still include up to now, group discussion, role play, debate, cooperation, cooperative learning, and others that help the learners to be at the center and bring the lecturer or the teacher to be a facilitator. And we thought that this would be helpful to cultivate critical thinking in learners, which cuts across all courses that we have in our universities and our learning institutions, other learning institutions like tertiary institutions. Some universities have had some of these courses now developed as a specific course and while others have them as cross-cutting issues. We also have transformative pedagogy for peace education and prevention of violence, extremism, anchored in the curriculum of some subjects such as religious studies and professional courses at different levels in our country. However, in the future, we prefer that we have the integration in the professional courses. That means every teacher that is trained in our institutions will have a dose of transformative pedagogy and will be able to talk about physical peace education and prevention of violence extremism to our learners. And we think that would be a good entry. Who do we partner with? We have worked at all institutions have worked with Ministry of Education, specifically with Teacher Education Training Department. And the other universities that were at the head of it included Makerere University for technical knowledge and consultant. We also had National Teacher Union. National Teachers Union is a body that coordinates teachers in our country. And we thought that they needed to be at the center of it so that every time they have any partnership meeting with the teachers, they give testimony and the need for transformative pedagogy. Of course, UNESCO Inquire was the center of it all because they were giving us funding. The relevance and some challenges that we have had, especially when COVID came in. As I said first, peace is a cross-cutting issue, and everyone or every person is vulnerable if there is no peace and there is violence. And at the same time, we also note that teachers are the change agents that you can have if you want to change anything, and their role in the society is very critical. We believe that peace begins from self, then to radiate to others. Hence, teacher educators' involvement in peace education and prevention of violence education, violence extremism is critical for creation of peace societies in the whole world. The teacher must be empowered. COVID delayed implementation of our intervention, but
Mrs.
also
Annette.
helps us. Hello?
Mrs. Annette.
Yes, please.
Annette, can you wrap up in the next 2 minutes, please? Can you wrap up in the next 2 minutes, please?
I am concluding. COVID delayed the implementation.
Okay, good. Thank you.
It helps us to know and identify gaps that we had and also plan on how to address them. We have worked very well to help our teachers understand the PE and PVE as the new phenomena in teacher education. But the good thing, they have positive attitude as we introduced it. There was enthusiasm, they participated, they have passion, and among the participants, they also have feelings on how it works very well for the work, for the community where they work, the society, and as themselves as individuals. We have gaps that we also have identified: limited capacity for the staff, clear justification why we need PV and PE, and why teacher education is where we should start from. We haven't clearly helped all of them understand. Some have not yet. And then funding has been a challenge. But the opportunity that we have that can help us to implement include positive attitude for the teachers, concerns of being vulnerable as teachers because they saw it during COVID, and also the need, the curriculum that has been reviewed, especially for us Uganda, since we are now entering the implementation of national teacher policy as a new approach. Participants requested the ministry to continue supporting them, and that's why we need more funding. Pilot of guidelines have already started in some institutions. Personal commitment, strength of personal commitment to strengthening the use of transformative pedagogy is very critical, and that's what we're focusing on as our next steps. Thank you, Messi. Asante.
Thank you, Asante Sana. Thank you very much, Mrs. Annette Mugisha Kajura from the Ministry of Education and Sport in Uganda. Thank you for sharing with us the experiences of the universities in Uganda about the transformative pedagogy and the process you have used to do that implementation, as well as the stakeholders that were involved, but also the challenges you have mentioned. I think your solutions will be found to overcome those challenges. Thank you so very much for this. I am kindly requesting participants to mute their microphones when they are not speaking, because yes, this can help us have a better hearing conditions. So now I am turning over to Mr. Abdirizak Mukhtar Yusuf. Abdirizak Mukhtar Yusuf is Head Communication Development, Teacher Training Department at Somali National University. So, Mr. Abdirizak, if you are with us, the floor is yours. Abdirizak, with us?
Hello, he hasn't joined us yet, and
yes.
We are trying to reach
him.
I hope he's all right.
He hasn't.
Trying to reach him. Yes. He hasn't joined yet.
So can we go to Mr. Reynold Galland then? Is he with us?
Yes, I am with you. I'm able to share my screen.
Okay, Mr. Reynold Galland, lecturer at Faculty of Education, Nelson Mandela University, South Africa. So the floor is yours. You said you want to share from your side. Please go ahead.
Yes. Let me just get this. There we go. Everybody able to see my screen?
Yes, Dr. Reynold, we can see.
Yes. Siku Njema, good day, colleagues.
8 minutes for the presentation, Mr. Reynold. Thank you.
Okay. Good day, colleagues, once again. Thank you for this opportunity to share with you our experiences here in South Africa regarding transformative pedagogy. Indeed, my name is Reynold Galland. I'm a lecturer in social science and geography and language, and it's really an honor to be with you today. I'll go right ahead with sharing our experiences. So during the implementation, training, structures and processes, we were all 26 universities were invited to the Education Deans Forum. The Dean in the Education Faculty at Nelson Mandela, she's the chairperson, so it was really a privilege working with her. Also, she became the lead person also for the project, etc. In terms of the faculty with the university. The invitation came through the Department of Higher Education, yes, the Department of Basic Education, and we were only 3 universities that responded to the score, from Durban University of Technology, Nelson Mandela University, and Salt Lake University as well, all from different parts of the country. We, as master trainers for peace building and prevention of violence in Africa, we're represented by Dr. Somlata, Dr. Fru, Dr. Mzindle, and myself, Mr. Gallant. Yes. UNESCO funded the project, and Nelson Mandela University was appointed as the fund holder. A virtual training, yes, due to COVID-19, workshops with students, staff, and SOC were held at the 3 universities in 2020 after our training in the December 2019. Training was done collectively at each university, with each master trainer presenting on the curriculum for peace building. This was during our first face-to-face master where we planned, the workshops itself and looked at the curriculum and how we then looked at how we will give each presenter then a part of the curriculum itself. There is what we the dates and everything that it was during 2021, and we had an overview, and as you can see there, we shared with each, we collaborated with each university to present these workshops. Yes, indeed, there were some challenges as well, and particularly with sending participants data packages to be part of this workshop as well. What would work well for us, and I think as mentioned, that first face-to-face to plan for the workshops had really a positive effect on our collaborative presentations. The meeting was a great opportunity for team building, with great support from staff and administrators, although COVID-19 had an impact on the turnaround times of administrative processes. And as I was the coordinator for the project, it was at sometimes really frustrating to move ahead. But however, senior colleagues in our faculties or schools of education availed themselves to do the welcoming address for our workshops. And that was also great to get their collaboration in that as well. One of the experiences that really stood out as well was that from the TVET, as we put out our advert university-wide and beyond that as well, we had quite a great response from colleagues from the technical and vocational education and training sector, especially at Nelson Mandela, and colleagues engaged constructively and really had a keen interest in transformative pedagogy indeed. Then we after the workshops and all of that, we presented, that went very well. Then in November in 2021, we had a strategic planning after we've identified lead students. We had at this point very few students that followed up on the workshops, and we identified a student from Nelson Mandela University and a student from the Durban University of Technology. Indeed, there was a student for Salt Lake University, but that student also kind of just faded away in the interest for this project. And the students themselves, SRC representatives became, and they presented well after doing the workshops and their reflections on it. Also during our strategic planning, the presentations as well. This is what we did for over that strategic planning. We had a whole plan where we had that we all came together to be able to look forward, how we moving forward with the project, how we would want to collaborate with others and get participation for this project as well. The plan itself, for instance, with engaging structures at the university for getting our structure, the peace building registered at our institutions, had some obstacles. There are so many societies and all of this, and I think the timing was also our timing was out to register that, but we are doing advocacy for a peace building, and currently there are students that are interested in this as well, and we really thought that from grassroots level, this peace club should emerge as well. The gaps and opportunities, yes, I think the timing of the workshops, as many students and staff were coming to the end of examinations, and staffs, even myself, we were submitting marks, and students were looking forward to a time of rest indeed. The one student from each from each institution that was became the champion and did some work, and we used our communication structures, and wherever they found themselves, even in other societies or structures, they promoted the whole peace building pedagogy, and indeed as well. And I think we should have involved more students from the onset, and really try and focus, not just having I think the one thing, the timing was out, but also not just doing the workshops, but getting them in a space where we would want to train them in terms of what are peace clubs and how to move forward from them. The one student, they did some work as well, but I think we just lacking capacity in terms of that. So we really think that to mobilize more resources, to mobilize students, and to get students, you know, as collective groups to also collaborate with one another from the different institutions as well, the different universities. And with staff members, quite recently in faculty, we had a strategic planning, and I went there with the purpose of infusing transformative pedagogy in our vision, and indeed, you know, I stood up and the transformative pedagogy also forms part of our vision going forward towards 2030 as well. Yes, and some of the developments that we've had with research and engagement, presented a paper, was virtually done. The title of that was Experiences of Teaching Transformative Pedagogies for Peace Building Across Selected Institutions of Higher Learning in South Africa. We successfully done that. And then Dr. Sakile Somlata is the project manager for, we put together an application for fellowship with the peace building, the African Peace Building Network. And our concept note there also was exploring peace building policy and practices in higher education in South Africa as well. That's still ongoing, and we still awaiting some response from them. It hasn't been negative or positive for that matter, but we're looking forward to such an engagement as well to do some research. Our reflections is just maybe just to say that it's how can universities help identify the causes and the potential solutions to conflict and contribute to building and sustaining peace through education, both in PVE and DHET. And the challenge for universities, especially teacher education, is how to best ensure transformative pedagogy becomes part of educative narratives in our spaces, both in faculty, but also with the training in schools as well, and also working with schools. So we were busy at the beginning of this year with a memorandum of understanding with Department of Education. That's also still ongoing. It's been a process where it kind of just faded away, you know, personally for me as well. But it's something that we ideally would want to pick up and ensure that there is partnership and working with schools and universities as well. And as this pilot project where we only ended up being 3 universities, how can we get all 26 universities involved? And our action plan outlines also the plans and to be able to do that. Establishing peace clubs and currently becomes very critical and crucial. I think there is a time now also for students, especially to start thinking of how do we engage communities as well with violence and extremism in our communities as well. So how can we become part of those kind of changing mindsets as well? And yes, for the next week, we're looking at participation and support. I just want to end up with saying from Chris Hani, if you want peace, then you must struggle for social justice. Asante. Thank you, colleagues.
Asante sana, Mr. Reynold Gallant, lecturer at the Faculty of Education at Nelson Mandela University in South Africa. Thank you very much for the very informative presentation in which you have shared the experience of the universities in South Africa, the process you used to implement transformative pedagogies, the relevant activities you have conducted, and the necessity, the focus you put on the necessity for collaboration, and also the research activities. Research is a very important domain. The initiatives also includes the creation of peace clubs which is very, very, very important. So thank you very much. Of course, social justice is very important to build the peace. Thank you very much. Now I'm going to give the floor to Dr. Tendai Marova. Dr. Tendai Marova is a lecturer in history, geography at the Faculty of Education at Midland State University in Zimbabwe. I think Dr. Tendai is with us. Yes, I can see you. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much for this space and the opportunity to share experiences on transformative pedagogy in the context of Zimbabwean universities. We were very fortunate to have been given an opportunity to participate in this particular project. And our participation came in a context, I'm not sure whether my slides are now visible.
Yes, we can see.
Oh, thank you very much. Let me try to then do the slideshow. Okay, I was saying our participation in this project came at a time when we were right at the height of the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. And as such, most of our institutions were ill-prepared for such an eventuality, especially the level of preparedness in terms of having technical expertise to facilitate online workshops, as well as the skills by both learners and also teachers to utilize this, to many of them, new way of doing teaching and learning. Despite that fact, we undertook our training, and our approach to that was trying to focus on teacher education and also various faculties within the universities of Zimbabwe. So the major thrust was that one of trying to empower, to provide skills in what you call capacity building, so that at the end of the training, the teacher educators would have been empowered, would then start practicing, transformative pedagogy in their institution by way of teaching their student teachers in a manner that is transformative, so that these student teachers, when they then go to schools, to teach in schools, they will also practice, transformative pedagogy. Our philosophy and argument was informed by the fact that teacher education has what we call a multiplier effect. And we were hinging on that particular notion. So our first focus was that one of targeting teacher education institutions, training secondary school teachers. That was that choice was deliberate, and also it was also strategic, in the sense that movement during this particular period of time was restricted, and many of our staff were accessing internet in their offices at work. So we were aware of the complications associated with trying to involve, the whole country in such a project at that particular moment in time. So we used a combination of, in these, virtual participatory workshops, a combination of participatory training and learning methods, which included sessions where we would brief participants. We also used, focus group discussions, and we used individual and groups tasks. As you are going to realize, we actually expected tangible and experiential output from the workshops that we undertook. And we also, as much as is humanly possible, we tried to tap from individuals' participation, experiences, and also experiences from each and every institution in the process of the training and the learning at the same time. So 8 teacher education institutions in secondary school teacher training colleges were targeted, and a total of about 37 participants managed to go through consistently the workshops which were undertaken within 3 days from the institutions involved. So at the end of the workshop, we had an output of about 37 participants participating fully in these particular workshops. And we, of course, collaborated. We were helped in the process of these workshops training by UNESCO institutions, where it had trained about 8 trainers of trainers. And these were the particular members who were responsible for facilitating the workshops throughout the period that we're engaging with these teacher education institutions and universities. And as you know, that universities do have several faculties within them, but also teacher education institutions within the various universities, including teacher education colleges, are very useful in terms of skilling and also capacitating teaching within the various spaces, not only the. So we ended up having, even amongst our trainers, members from various faculties, not necessarily from the faculties of education or from teacher education, but also some came from the humanities, the arts, and the like. And these were very useful in also trying to make sure that people understand how applicable the transformative pedagogy is across the curriculum, either in a university context or in a school context. So to this effect, the trainers of trainers who were trained, who happened to come from various disciplines, effectively engaged with the participants across the curriculum. How did we anchor, transformative pedagogy in various subjects within the curriculum? Like I've already alluded to, we had members training, the trainers of, the teacher educators were drawn from across various disciplines. And we drew from their practical examples from these disciplines across the curriculum, so that we could really engage on not only the conceptual understanding of transformative pedagogy, but also on how this would then work out in a real classroom situation. And from these practical activities, we were able also to get some insights and also to draw what we derived as practical lesson plans models, which could be used by our student teachers as they go out for their teaching practice. Apart from us having, members from across these disciplines, we also had several partners. Of course, our major partner were from UNESCO institutions, for example, UNESCO ISBA, and also our own regional office here, ROSA. We had the stakeholders as well from the Ministry of Higher and Tertiary Education, Innovation, Science and Technology, Zimbabwe. And all these were very strategic in the process of trying to operationalize the workshops that we're engaging with. For example, we got our technical advice and guidance from the UNESCO institutions, but at the same time, because of the nature of the context in which we're operating, members from the Ministry of Higher and Tertiary Education were very, very useful in negotiating for space for us to undertake this particular project in a context where there were limited, mobility due to restrictions of COVID-19. Yes, we want to acknowledge the fact that although the context was such restricted, every measure was taken to make sure that those who participated in these workshops did so under conditions that would not harm, that would not expose them to danger, or that would not at the same time compromise the quality of our training. What was the relevance? What is the relevance in responding to contextual realities and challenges? And we are referring to the realities of Zimbabwe and the challenges associated with Zimbabwe. The workshops and transformative pedagogy in particular were quite useful in engaging with what we may call the realities of Zimbabwe, because these workshops came at a time when our own government was making an effort to make some changes within the school curriculum, and also make some changes within the higher education curriculum, where the school curriculum now emphasized on what they call the competence-based curriculum. And in the higher education sector, we are now talking about Education 5.0, which encourages, besides teaching and learning, besides research, besides community engagement, but also emphasizes on innovation and also industrialization to make those pillars of higher education in Zimbabwe 5. So transformative pedagogy, because of its practical orientation, which is more context-based, and also which tries to encourage the use of locally available resources in order for and to make learning more experiential by way of engaging the learners in a way that would make them, use in tackling problems that they encounter in their everyday life, became a very useful, lever to advance a new way of looking at how we then teach what to teach. Because previously, some of these packages which would be suggested would be, suggested, but without having very practical ways of how to operationalize or how to transform the curriculum in terms of its operationalization. So transformative pedagogy became a very useful lever for us to advocate for a way of doing things that don't just doesn't just focus on the cognitive development of learners, but also on other spheres such as the social emotional domains and also the behavioral domains. So this was also useful in the sense that it was also advancing the idea of fostering quality education within all spheres of learning in Zimbabwe. It was also in sync with the projects which had been going on in our universities for education for sustainable development, particularly so the Change Project, which had emphasized again on 21st century skills. But again, how these 21st century skills were going to be taught was not very clear. So when transformative pedagogy came onto the scene, it became a very useful avenue to advocate for a new way of operationalizing our educational packages. Above all, it became useful and relevant due to the sense that it also was contributing to this more broad view of citizenship education agenda, because all along in Zimbabwe, the piecemeal forms of citizenship education which were being advocated for and operationalized focused more on national values, focused more on patriotic values, which are not bad in themselves. But then in a world that is now interconnected and sophisticated, a diverse world, we now need more robust and more nuance the values that would facilitate or that would develop and change attitudes, skills, as well as changing values of the learners in order for them to be empowered with those type of skills and values that would enable them to interact at any given time in any given place across the world. So given that scenario, we perceived transformative pedagogy as very, very useful. And of course, we got a lot of buy-in from policy stakeholders. The main lessons which we learned throughout the exercise, number one, it had to do with the constitution of the team that was working, in trying to operationalize the integration of transformative pedagogy in teacher education. Like I alluded to, it was a multidisciplinary team with members coming from various spheres of academia, others from the sciences, others from the social sciences, humanities, as well as education. That actually gave us a very effective way to then incorporate ideas and examples from across the curriculum. What is it that I will start with? Also the fact that transformative pedagogy provided practical guide to the practice of teaching and learning. Unlike, like I said, yes.
Hello, Dr. Tanda.
Yes. Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you. Hello.
Yes, Dr. Tendai,
Okay,
you have 2 minutes to wrap up. Okay.
All right, that's fine. So we engaged with the students. We hope to engage. This is one of the gaps that we actually have. Engagement with school leaders and mentors in schools, as well as primary and secondary education officials. To this effect, we hope that using the lever that we now have of teacher educators who have been trained, we hope to further advance this particular notion of transformative pedagogy. Just some clips, video clips of what was, generated by those who participated in these particular workshops as evidence of context-based practices that could be used for transformative pedagogy. Let me see how far I can go with this. Hoping that the videos will quickly. Yeah, it looks like we have a connectivity issue there. I can't play the videos right now. Sorry about that. I wanted to end this session with some snapshots of some videos which we shared with colleagues who participated in this particular workshop. But then our next steps in terms of operationalizing pedagogy at personal level, I've already started embedding transformative pedagogy in my own teacher education practices. And I'm also involved in mobilizing colleagues and resources for further follow-up programs, which means resources is a cross-cutting issue across all the presenters here today. I've also been thinking of ways to design and produce open educational resources for practical use, in particular in various spheres of educational operation, such as in schools and also in teacher education context. With this, I want to thank you for listening attentively and also for having me on this particular platform. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tendai. Yes. Salu, can you hear us?
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tendai, for the. Can you hear me?
Please, we can't hear you. Your network is really bad.
Yes, Salu, your voice is breaking.
Jerry, can you
Yes,
hear
it's
me?
okay. It's okay. Yes,
It's not clear. It's not clear over here.
Yes, we can take it. No problem. So I think we have now the presentation has ended, and it's unfortunate that we couldn't have Somalia with us together, and that's because of the connectivity issue, I think. But we will have the Somalia experience in the next webinar also. So now we will leave the floor for discussion and question and answer. So I will give the floor for Eleonora if there is any question from participants. Over to you, Eleonora.
Yes, thank you, Jerusalem. I will start by taking a few of the questions that were put in the chat. And then, of course, I invite participants now, as they have gone through all the presentations and the keynote. If you have more questions, please write them in the chat, or also after the first round, you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask the question. Before I ask the questions, I also wanted to acknowledge in the chat, somebody from Tanzania asked if Tanzania has been part of this program. And Tanzania at the moment has not been part of the program, but we really invite you to reach out to IGBA and you know, make yourself you know, acknowledged and talk to IGBA about that. And also, of course, as we said, after the webinars, we will circulate the presentations, the resources, the various teachers' guide that have supported the work in the different countries. So before I move on to the next question, Professor Jonas, I hope you are there. Your keynote really sparkled a lot of interest, and I know you have already replied to some of the inquiries directly in the chat, but there are two additional questions for you. One is a little bit of a technical question asking on the difference between humanizing pedagogy and transformative pedagogy, if any. So please, if you could give a quick clarification on this. And the other question is more, you know, it was really more about the fact that very often you know, there are some injustices, but that are sometimes procrastinated as a structural injustice by the agents of the states. So the person in the question wanted to ask a clarification about that. How could transformative pedagogy help us in this environment of structural injustice that sometimes is taken on by state actors? So over to you, Professor Jonas, and for the others, again, the invitation to ask more questions for our panelists. Over, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I was almost to step out, for our flight is in 40 minutes now to Addis. So brilliant. Humanizing pedagogy and at the same time transformative pedagogy. If there is any difference, what an excellent question actually. Some people even have this what's called humanistic approach. Sometimes TPR, total physical response pedagogy. There are so many, you know, classifications of pedagogy so as to make it respond to emerging and potential educational, both policy and philosophical problems. So to answer, to hit the nail on the head, they really are very much related, but humanizing happens to ignore climate aspect, environment aspect, other species as well. So pedagogy, transformative seems to be transcending those, you know, rather than making human beings the center, also the universe the center, the environment, particularly the environment at the center, and climate at the center. They have their own reason. This taking us back to dialogic approach, first to Socrates, Socratic methodology, and then Paulo prays that dialogic approach. That is liberating the children from that banking system to thinking system, to transforming system. But the way you transform should not simply focus on the task that is the learning activities, and the learner himself, the person, whole person himself, I said here, in a sense, herself, himself, that's this modern English of one singular, and then your plural, your pronoun becomes plural immediately. So yes, I took from that angle. And so they are related in that transformative includes humanizing pedagogy as well, but going particularly towards the environment and the climate. And now in our peace and security studies, even we also focus on outer space as well, the outer space, which just go from blue economy again to the outer space for humanity at the same time. Making human beings survive does not mean simply focusing on human beings alone, but the environment must be focused, climate must be focused. Then you have this holistic transformative aspect. And this leads me to the second excellent question, absolutely. And that is, given protracted conflict, given structural conflict, systemic conflict, where some are born to rule, some are born to be ruled, in some cases, creed and color differences, gender differences, class differences. And given such circumstances, how do you think it is possible to transform the curriculum? Because curriculum almost everywhere in the world is owned by the policymakers. Curriculum is almost, if you like, a political issue like security sector governance. You can't go into security sector governing without talking to political will of a government. So in the same way, this curriculum is there so as to put the philosophy of a governing state or government, a governing party, their thinking into action. Do you think they can simply allow you to unfetter and enter into expression of, freedom of expressions, address injustices, break that ceiling glasses? Do you think that that's absolutely soul-searching question? That's why we were talking about holistic approach. My answer is still goes back to Socrates and that of Confucius' answer. Rather than blaming the darkness, lightening whatever candle we have, making students really, raising their awareness. That basic question like, why am I here? Who am I? Fundamental questions. Then how can we together make sort of change, sort of from formation, classroom particularly, by just demonstrating what's meant by democratic practice in classroom, then at family, one person can be really an agent, change agent for the whole structure at the same time. This is what's been really practiced. So rather than really blaming any systems in that, I think we can start with a classroom, then with a school, and then maybe with a province, and gradually that's a change, like throwing a stone in the water keeps on and on having those triple effect. So that's really how I see, without being violent, without being revolutionary, because an idea whose time has
I think we might have lost Dr. Jonas. Can you hear him? Okay.
No.
Well, he had said this was a weak connection, but I do think that Dr. Jonas really replied to the question in the chat, and particularly emphasizing in this last moment the point about transformative pedagogy really being a human-centered approach, and the fact that as teachers, as educators, we can really make a difference despite the structural violence that sometimes is around us, and how we can help the learners to understand these structures and work along the structures to be agents of peace. So thank you, Dr. Jonas. Maybe we'll be able to reconnect, maybe not, as his flight is soon due to go back to Addis. I want to acknowledge here, Dr. Tendai, there is a question for you. Particularly, how can one foster patriotic values to transformative pedagogy in a country where the young generation feels that the leadership has failed them? So Dr. Tendai, this is the question for you. Let me know if I have to repeat the question or if you're ready to take over.
Yeah, that's a very, very important question. And it's a question that worries many who operate in a context of limited democratic space. But then with transformative pedagogy, it's a key, principles allude to a type of pedagogy that promotes, a critical reflection to teaching and learning. So in terms of advancing patriotic values in themselves have this danger that patriotism itself can be interpreted in a very narrow and parochial way, thereby limiting the way learners, set themselves in the context they operate. But if transformative pedagogy is used with its tenets and principles and values, it then allows learners to think outside the box or to see beyond, the narratives which will be in the public domain. So I think it is very critical to operationalize transformative pedagogy, even in contexts where there is limited democratic space.
Thank you, Dr. Marova. And again, thank you for really bringing out, as Dr. Jonas also was doing with the structural violence, really bringing down on how we operationalize the pedagogy and how we contextualize it to respond to the challenges and to respond to the context. So in this case, really trying to work at the empowerment of young people. There is one more question, and I would like to invite Dr. Josephine and Dr. Marova to pick it up. The question is, how can we empower or retain practicing educators to cope with learners whose methods of learning are very different from past learners? So Dr. Marova, Dr. Josephine, please feel free to reply to this question.
Thank you very much, moderator. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, moderator, and thank you for the person who asked that question. It is a very important question and it is a reality. We deal more and more with learners who are sort of disengaged from their responsibility of learning. And part of the reason why it is so is because in most cases, learners have been subjected to learning in a manner that they don't have control of it. They don't feel they own it. They don't feel it is their responsibility. They wait to be given everything. And you take it as it comes. And that is a real challenge. And it is not something that you can change overnight. But slowly, you learn to accommodate and insist, but still in a patient way, that they have to own up learning, take it as their responsibility. They must question what they see as gospel truth. They must learn to ask questions around
whatever they are doing. And in that way, you'll be empowering them to start thinking that they actually have power, they have the ability, they own their destiny. And tomorrow, these are the learners, the people who we have today will be our leaders of tomorrow. And if they don't start asking questions now, they will never ask those questions. And hence the circle will continue. So we must pick up this transformative pedagogy idea and push it slowly. It comes, it doesn't happen suddenly, but as long as a few people pick it up, it will eventually spread. Everything starts in a small manner. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if I have answered the question.
Well, we'll ask Mr. Pranesh Jugatnath to let us know through the chat. I think you answered the questions. And again, transformative pedagogy goes back very much to building first peace with yourself, an individual transformation, and then really collectively build peace with others. But it's this concept of agency, as Dr. Josephine was saying, that is really crucial, and to know that we really have the power, we can be empowered to transform realities around us. And when learners understand that, they can really become agents of change, and the learning can be different and can be co-constructed with the teachers. So thank you. So Mr. Pranesh, please let us know. And I know also Dr. Marova, maybe you wanted to comment on this same question of Dr. Josephine. And there is also another question about the relationship of constructive pedagogy with transformative pedagogy. So Dr. Marova, please feel free to reply to any other of the question. And I see Pietro has a question. We wait for one last round. Dr. Marova, over to you.
Oh, thank you very much. I wanted to say, in response to how we can empower or retrain practicing educators to cope with learners whose methods of learning are very different from past learners. You see, transformative pedagogy in practice, if you have started operationalizing it, it's quite engaging and also exciting, to such an extent that even those who used to think that learning should be easygoing, like, for example, those who were used to be given handouts, notes by teachers who dictate notes and the like, will start realizing what they were missing, you know, when you start operationalizing transformative pedagogy, because it is involving. You should have seen the videos that I wanted to share with you, where learners can actually be given tasks to go and pick on experiences which, for example, speak to certain activities in our own history, in the way people used to do farming a long time ago, or in peace education, activities available in the community which bring people together and foster solidarity. So that makes them active, and that makes them more engaged and willing more to learn, you know, through this new approach to learning. So it's a question of how we operationalize what we are teaching, and that will then, you know, just like that would then trigger this motivation to learn using this new approach of learning. And then the one that refers to transformative pedagogy, the relationship between transformative pedagogy and constructivist pedagogy. I think because transformative pedagogy encourages learning to be generated from what learners already know, moving from the known to the unknown, living from their daily experiences, exploring other experiences that they do not know about or that they've not yet experienced. That has a component that speaks to constructing new ways of learning and new forms of knowledge, values, attitude, etc. So there is a relationship between these two ways of teaching and learning.
Doctor, can I add to that?
Yes, of course.
Yes, the relationship between transformative pedagogy and constructivism is there. For transformative pedagogy, okay, constructivism empowers learners to
to use their experiences. But we are adding that to say, other than just using your experience, can you also have an ability to question the values, the belief systems? So it goes beyond just drawing on experiences, but also questioning on the values and the belief systems, and critically trying to see that the knowledge that you generate, you reflect beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Josephine. And I mean, again, I welcome the other presenters also. If you have something to add, please jump in. Pietro, I see your hands is up. Maybe you want to ask a question. And then there is one more question also on competencies-based curriculum. But Pietro, over to you for your question, and then I will ask the second one from the chat.
Okay, thank you very much. I just quickly wanted to add that from my experiences from utilizing this approach, I think there's a convergence. It's not really the fact that the traditional method should be relegated for transformative pedagogy. I think because our field, which is peace building, it's a behavioral field, it's a behavioral science. So everyone is a peace builder and has something to offer. So transformative approach brings out that traits in the individual, be it young, be it old. But by the time you apply that in other sphere of education, you could have some challenges. So I'd like to point out that what we've experienced really in peace building in behavioral field like this is that it is very effective. But you can't take a subject like chemistry or mathematics and say you want to apply transformative pedagogy. So I think I just needed to underscore that really.
Yes, thank you, Pietro, for this clarification. And maybe Dr. Reynolds from South Africa, do you have also a clarification on this, as well as maybe replying on the question here in the chat that is about the connections between transformative pedagogy and competencies-based curriculum or competencies-based pedagogy?
Yes, indeed, Laura. I think for currently looking at the approach towards having peace clubs and that, and then thinking about transformative pedagogy and how it actually fits in. And for me, it's about having learner-led kind of actions. So it is, yes, constructing with them. They have knowledge, they have informal knowledges and all of those kind of things. But transformative pedagogy really creates a safe space, which in turn gives them, or it should give them to support them in their actions towards bringing about a better society. Really, I often get the impression that we don't want to explicitly say it, but the world is in trouble as we find it. We find in South Africa, for instance, learners are very disillusioned with what they are experiencing, high unemployment rates, and this also creates the non-peace in their hearts and minds, in their existence, and over and above the fact of violence in our own country and in many places, gangsterism and that. So for them to be able to look at how, through this approach of transformative, how do I transform my own thinking? Some of the communities would, for instance, say, I am from this area where it is looked down upon with gangsterism, but I am not this context. I can be much more. And I think that is transforming their minds towards something different in creating a more sustainable environment for themselves towards entrepreneurship, into finding employment. They see graduates being that are unemployed for that matter, and it just creates that sense of hopelessness. And I think for me, transformative pedagogy, when you kind of infuse the essence of not just the human being, but everything around it, like Professor Jonas also mentioned. They see the change in climate, they see in the environment how it is being challenged and all of that. and bring all those understandings together, they are able then to transcend their thinking, come towards that butterfly, as it were, to be able to think of, I can transform my own existence through peaceful means as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Reynolds. And I will take this opportunity also to ask again one more questions to our presenter, that is about the relations between transformative pedagogy and inquiry-based learning and methods. I think Professor Jonas elaborated a little bit on his keynotes, but I would like to ask also you all, Dr. Morova, Dr. Josephine, Reynolds again, if you can elaborate a little bit on the connections between inquiry-based pedagogy and approaches and transformative pedagogy.
If I might.
Yes, please.
So for me, inquiry-based approach is to ask the questions and for the learners, the students to respond to the what, the how, the where, the when, but more so, why is this happening in our world? It could be from any concept or whatever. And I think the why for some, why do I have to learn certain things are becoming more important for those that learn, learners or students. And inquiry-based is giving them, it's a way of empowering them to think about these burning issues in our world. The questions that transformative pedagogy supports this, because it is focused on not just the learner, but creating them to start thinking of action also, as well as I mentioned earlier on. So it is not just ending the questions, but what do we do now with this? Now that we have discovered there's more in understanding about this, what do we do with this kind of this thinking now? How do we actually change our world, as it were?
Thank you, Reynolds, for pointing this out. And first of all, in the chat, there are some comments about ethics and fostering ethical thinking. And of course, as you will see when we will share with you also the teacher's guide that support the transformative pedagogy approach, you will see that there is actually a full chapter and a training module dedicated to fostering ethical reflections in the classroom, and also to fostering ethical reflections to move from the classroom to action. So as the presenters were saying, to really move into the community engagement. So hopefully that those aspects will be very much resonating with you that had this comment, and thank you for these comments. Transformative pedagogy is very much about responding to the ethical demand of the context and the communities where the students live, including the school community. So this is one aspect that is very much embedded in the approach. And there is another question, and again, to all three the presenters, whoever wants to reply, the question goes like this: when do a country considers transformative pedagogy? Prioritizations against curriculum, syllabus, teaching and learning material, when can a country consider this? Is there a particular stage? And particularly if we are talking about countries that are afflicted by conflict and fragility. So please, anyone that would like to share from the presenters, this is the question.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. So when a country can start to consider transformative pedagogy? And in a way, the question goes like, when should a country prioritize maybe transformative pedagogy against curriculum, syllabus, other teaching and learning materials, and particularly if we are talking about countries that are conflict affected and in a state of fragility? What is the right moment to consider transformative pedagogy? And I ask Faisal Habdi Momin, please, if the question was not explained well, let us know in the chat. But I believe, Dr. Josephine, was it clearer now?
Thank you. Yes, now I have got the question. I actually, for such countries transformative pedagogy is even more critical, because take, for example, if you have a country which is engulfed in a war, and we have children, adults living in settlements, in camps, it is very important that we need to have a starting point to make these children realize that this can come to an end, and it begins with them. They need to start looking at themselves as agents of change. And that's where transformative pedagogy is very important. So an intervention, for example, of even having the teachers who are handling the children already at the camps, or the community members, the parents, start discussing how they can live in harmony and have themselves as agents of change, agents of peace, would be something very important. So for me, it doesn't have to wait that, okay, now we first have to do this before we start transformative pedagogy. It should start right there. The question is, can we build the capacity? Can we build the capacity? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Josephine. And I think this is also what we have been saying during the transformative pedagogy dialogues, that the approach is customizable and can be integrated also step by step. So as such, is not a complex framework that needs to be integrated, but every country and every curriculum developer, every teacher in the classroom, they can also see what parts of the transformative pedagogy approach can be complemented according to their needs. And yes, I echo with you is the question about the support and strengthening the capacities in this field. So thank you very much to all our presenters. I think we are a little bit pressed with time. So I have to declare closed the Q&A questions, but if there are other questions, please write them in the chat. We'll try our best to reply them in the follow-up email. And Sal, please, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Eleonora. I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, we can. It's breaking a little bit, but we can
hear me.
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much, Eleonora, for excellently moderating the session. And I would like to add my voice to yours to thank the panelists, Mr. Reynolds, Dr. Jonas, Mr. Dr. Tendai, and Mrs. Annette for sharing experiences from Zimbabwe, Ethiopia, South Africa, and Uganda. And thank all the participants for their active participation in the session. Now, which is about the closing remarks. The closing remarks will be delivered by our colleague Julia Hess, who is representing Professor Lydia Arthur Vito, who is the Regional Director and Representative at the UNESCO Harare office.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, Julia, we can. Please go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Greetings to Yumiko Yokoseki, the Director of UNESCO ICPA. Greetings also to Dr. Jonas Adeto from the Peace and Security Studies.
The floor is yours for the closing remark. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So I was just greeting Dr. Adeto from the Addis Ababa University. Greetings to all the excellent presenters, participants of the meeting, partner organizations, colleagues in ICPA and colleagues in UNESCO. I'm Julia Heiss. I'm the current acting head of education in the UNESCO Regional Office for Southern Africa, and I have the honor to present these closing remarks on behalf of my director, Professor Lydia Brito, who unfortunately has another event at the moment. Africa is the world's youngest continent. Inarguable, investing in education for youth and children is crucial for a peaceful, a stable, hopeful, and happy future for its many nations. Peace building is clearly an original task, goal not only for the United Nations, for UNESCO as well, and for the African Union. And the UN Sustainable Development Goal 4.7 clearly emphasizes the role of peace and civic education in order to ensure that all learners acquire knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development, including, among others, through education for sustainable development, human rights, gender equity, the promotion of culture of peace, non-violence, and global citizenship education. Moreover, peace is also a central focus in the African Union's 2062 agenda. There are at least 3 goals referring to peace and peace education. Goal number 13 talks about peace, security, and stability. Goal number 14 talks about a stable and peaceful Africa. And goal number 18 acknowledges that the engagement and the empowerment of youth and children is important to that end. It is at that important intersection of peace building and youth empowerment that our agenda lies for today's meeting. The call for an education that builds the values of peace, resilience, conflict resolution, and appreciation for diversity into the minds and hearts of youth needs to be stronger now more than ever, and especially after emerging from the COVID-19 pandemic that clearly exacerbated existing tensions across the world and our nations. To contribute to this, the UNESCO regional offices of Southern Africa, in partnership with the SADC Secretariat, is promoting regional integration, social cohesion, and peaceful existence. And we are doing that through targeting youth in teaching South African liberation history and global citizenship education. Our office developed a roadmap of integrating GCD and South African liberation history in teaching and learning, which identifies common values and learning outcomes that can be advanced through those 2 education streams, with the view of promoting a sense of belonging, solidarity, a regional identity and integration, and to guide education planners and practitioners to mobilize GCD and liberation history contents. This roadmap has been approved by all ministries in the SADC SADC ministerial meeting last year, and we are about to roll it out together with UNESCO ICPA and also Eleonora. We are very happy to start a training very soon at the end of this month. And some of you in this meeting are going to be part of that. We are looking forward to that. I would therefore sincerely thank and acknowledge UNESCO ICPA for its efforts towards introducing transformative pedagogy for peace building in Africa, and also the government of Japan for its financial support to the program. I believe that during this webinar, we really all gained new knowledge, shared valuable experiences and good practices, and encouraged each other in designing future interventions in peace and citizenship education. And this will be instrumental in transforming and developing a peaceful society in Africa. Thank you so much, Tadenda and Asante Sana. Handing over to you, Eleanor.
Well, I actually think, Sal, if you are connected, please. Can you hear us, Sal?
Yes, we can hear you.
I think Salu has that connectivity issue. So thank you very much, Julia, and thank you for reading the notes on behalf of Professor Lydia. And it's always a pleasure to work with the Southern Regional Office of UNESCO. And thank you for all the support while we are working on the Southern African countries. And we hope also we'll have a very good collaboration.
Thank you all for this meeting. Thank you.
All the SADC countries in 2023 and in the future. And thank you very much. Thank you very much, presenters. Thank you, Dr. Tindai, Ms. Commissioner Annette, and thank you, Dr. Reinhold. And thank you very much. And it was really a very encouraging session. And I'm really happy to hear that a lot is going on in each country. And I know that the other countries have a lot to share, and we'll try to create a space for other countries to share in the coming webinars. And it's also a pleasure to have you all here, and please keep on communicating with us, and we will also share the documents from today's webinar, and we will see you on June 22nd, webinar, which a youth group will share with us about their experience. So today, many of the questions were around the area of how learners take this approach, and we will see and we will hear also from the youth how they take it and how they, work with it and how they interact with their peers and how they engage on their use their adaptations using this approach in their own way. And thank you very much, really, countries for those countries who are presenting and for those countries who have been in this program and for the wonderful cooperation we had. I think now it's time to end this webinar. And thank you, Salu, for moderation, and thank you, Eleonora and the team for the chat moderation and for the technical support at the back. And thank you, for the technical support for the next webinar. And thank you very much. Now I think we can open our video and we can say goodbye for today. Thank you very much.
Yeah, goodbye, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Bye.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you.
Very much for the program. Bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you
very
so
much,
much.
Mr. Samuel. Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Thank you, Professor. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. Thank you. We appreciate it. And Mary,
Bye.
good to see you.
Bye. Bye from Kenya. Bye, bye.
Yes, thank you.
Bye, Eleanor.
Yeah, Laura.
Goodbye, Jerusalem.
Goodbye,
Bye-bye.
Nora. Bye. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Cyprian. And we'll see you in June 22. Thank you.
Thank you too. Bye. Bye-bye.
Yes, thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Florence from Nigeria.
Oh, Professor Florence, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us.
Jerusalem, thank you. Dorothy Oluwabemi Jacob from Nigeria.
Thank you. Thank you very much for joining.
You're welcome.
nanti agar